Teddy Stoecklein is my guest today. Teddy is the co-executive creative director at the Portland, Maine-based advertising agency VIA. With over 16 years of experience at the agency, Teddy has helped guide VIA to win numerous accolades, including being named the coveted Small Agency of the Year. In addition to his leadership role, Teddy remains actively involved in the creative process, bringing his passion for mentoring young talent and delivering innovative, award-winning work for clients like Lot and Golden Corral, and of course many more. Helen, let's start the show.
It's time for Respect the Process, a short chat about commercial filmmaking. Here's your host, Director Jordan Brady.
Oh, Helen, I am super excited about my chat with Teddy. Listeners, you're going to love it. I'm also excited about the 30th of December on the Filmmakers Academy platform. I'm going to be going tete-a-tete with legendary cinematographer Shane Hurlbut as we discuss the director-DP collaboration workflow. And that is on the Filmmakers Academy platform, as I said. And it's going to be live. They probably record it if you're a member, but there's a spirited Q&A, and I have donated, I don't know if that's the right word, but I have given an agency script, my treatment, location photos, storyboard etchings, and I think they'll play a couple of the spots. So we'll use that as a case study as we go. Shane has also contributed some materials that are very in-depth. So I think it's a well worthwhile thing for you to sign up for. And I have a code somewhere. DM me if you need the code. Otherwise, just go to the Filmmakers platform. As you know, I am a grandfluencer. Helen, that is a grandpa influencer. I'm 60 years old, and I'm probably one of the older influencers in your timeline on Instagram or LinkedIn. Kind of given up on the X, not on Facebook a lot. Although, Helen, I found out when I post on my Instagram, the computer AI puts it on the Facebook. So anyway, you know that I love the Magic Mind because it's got the ashwagandha, the vitamins, it's a performance elixir for the brain, and it gets me in that flow state. It's how I get a lot of stuff done, and it's been a part of my morning routine for the last couple of years now, and I love the Magic Mind people. The funniest thing that happened in 2024 with Magic Mind was, and they sponsored the retreat. They sent me Magic Mind for the boot campers. But the funniest thing was I did an on-set thing with my iPhone. I was like, hey, I'm on set. I got a big crew doing a big shoot, got a big camera. I'm drinking my second Magic Mind, the afternoon shot that I do on shoot days. And the Magic Mind people put like B-roll over my talking and tagged me on it, and they show like a random guy with a camera doing a shot, and then people lighting a scene. But the craziest is there's a guy, like a stunt person with a sword getting ready for the shot, like a stunt coordinator with swords play. A sword play? What do they call it, Helen? Anyway, like I'm doing some swashbuckling commercial for pirates or with pirates when really it was a Toyota commercial. But I was flattered that the Magic Mind people did that. Use the code Brady20 and you'll save a lot of money and get shit done like me. The Filmmaker Retreat is coming up not till September of 2025, but a lot of people are signing up. By a lot, I mean a couple, because we only take 15 filmmakers. Helen, cue up the talk with Teddy. I'm snooping around your website, and the Greenpeace Reggie Watts stuff, which I think goes back a few years before he really exploded. I remember that because I saw him in a club in Portland, Oregon, on the other side of the country, like in 2009, and I'd never seen anything like that in the comedy space. I'd seen hip hop DJs and Birdie Man and people like that.
Yeah.
But you had your finger on the pulse. You tapped him early.
Well, it was, I'm guessing the year that we produced the work for Greenpeace was after that. It was probably 2012 is my guess.
Yeah. But still, he wasn't on Conan. People didn't know him.
Yeah. Oh, he's so funny. He's like a true entertainer, but he's more than a musician. He's a comedian, and he's a political activist. He's kind of got a lot of tools in his toolbox. And we were lucky that, I think it was obviously Greenpeace is such a well-known brand in and of itself that I think he immediately took a shine to the opportunity too.
And so at that point, that was BBDO and you were in New York?
No, that was at VIA. The Greenpeace worked at VIA. I was at BBDO in New York prior to moving to Maine. I moved to Maine in 2008.
What was that decision?
Well, I mean, the short story is I met my wife in New York City. I was at BBDO. We had a baby, and that changed things a lot after 12 years in New York City. I wasn't a city kid. I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh, but in the outskirts of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But the city life, I fell in love with New York City the moment I arrived there in 1997 at BBDO. I spent two stints at BBDO, so I went to McCann in between BBDO stints. But I love the energy. It was addictive. The whole energy of New York, as you know, addictive. And I thought I really thought I would never, ever leave New York City. But then we had a baby, everything changed. And we're like, you know what? I kind of want a yard. I want to, we looked around to maybe move to a suburb, Connecticut, New Jersey, Long Island. But we always escaped on the weekends to leave New York City anyway, with my wife and myself and then our baby. We were going to Cape Cod in the summers or Vermont in the winters. So really the city was just a place to work. And when you had a baby, we were getting on a subway with the stroller, and all of a sudden we became those people that when I was riding the subway and you're like, oh, I got to make room for this, not to
became that couple.
I didn't want to be imposing on anybody. And there we were imposing our space. So we just started looking elsewhere, and I met the people that, the founder and the chief creative officer at VIA, and it was serendipitous that we met because I was looking at Boston. My wife's from outside of Boston, and we thought we'd go to an agency in Boston. And they said, just come to Maine first before you commit to Boston. We never looked back. It's been a love affair ever since. We love Maine. It's just incredible.
That's the one state out of the United States, including Puerto Rico, that I've never been to.
Oh. Are you based in New York City? Where are you based?
I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Oh, we're pretty far from you.
Yeah. But the agency has headquarters in Portland, Maine?
Yeah, this is where we were founded about 33 years ago. I think the exact year was 1993. VIA was founded and has been in Portland, Maine ever since. At one point, they had some satellite offices. They had a space in New York City. They had a place in Boston. They even had a place in Zurich, Switzerland.
Of course.
Before my time.
Sister city to Portland, Maine.
Right, exactly. But then that when I arrived in 2008, they had brought everything back to Portland, Maine, so that everyone's in the same building, and we're servicing all our clients out of here.
Are you in the office now, or are you at home?
I am. Yeah, I'm in one of the rooms. My actual office doesn't have a closed door, so I have to find a room when I have phone calls and things.
Now, the difference, you all have been awarded Small Agency of the Year a couple of times, with a few years in between.
Yeah.
Which I find interesting because it says you won, which I think, I don't have my browser up in front of me, it might have been like 2011 or something. And then again in 18 or 19, which says the fire never went out. It was like, come on, we got to win again.
Yeah. I remember the moment so well. So that I think the first year was 2010. We were named runner-up, and it was so exciting because the agency had not really been on a stage like that. We had a couple of national clients, but the history of the agency was more B2B. Before I arrived, when I had arrived in 2008. They'd gained a few national accounts, so that was helpful. B2C accounts. They had Welch's grape juice was a big one, and that was an exciting moment in time. And then we won a bunch of accounts at my first couple of years, and then we were runner up for a small agency of the year in 2010, and then we kind of got a taste of the blood, so to speak.
Yeah.
The founder, John and Greg and David Murphy, and they went to New Orleans for the reveal of the agency of the year. And I think it was in New Orleans that time, or maybe I forget I think we came runner up, and we were very excited just to be in the spotlight a little bit.
Sure.
And then the next year we won it. And it was like, holy shit, here we are. We
know what we're doing.
We still get people when we say we're from Portland, they're like, oh, I have friends in Oregon. We're like, no, the other Portland. But it was really helpful. And I mean, we're so grateful to Ad Age because that thing really helps small agencies.
Oh, I bet.
Exposure. I mean, it's unbelievable. So we went runner up, then a winner, and then we tried to we would win every year if we could.
Yeah. But let me interject one thing.
Yeah.
You got there in 2008. And then runner-up and then winner. I mean, Teddy's got to get some kudos for that. I know you're going to be gracious and say the team and da-da-da, but, I mean, if you look at the calendar, Teddy was leading the ship.
I appreciate you saying that, but I was just a cog in the wheel. That it was, I did have a nice pedigree coming from agencies like BBDO and McCann. But I wasn't the only one. There were other people here. Sure. Great leadership. The whole agency is rooted. John Coleman's the founder, and he was very day-to-day then, and entrepreneurial spirit was really it. We were kind of a wild. When I arrived, there was already a band of misfits, and they were already like these pirates in this coastal town in Maine. And so I just joined the party. It was a lot of fun.
I knew you were going to say that, and I agree that it takes a team to win. But for a podcast, if you would have gone, hell yeah, it was me, like that would be good podcast gold. So I had to ask.
Yeah. No, I was just lucky.
Well, I don't know about luck, but yeah. Well, that's really cool, and it does. I mean, it does bring credibility when the agency is smart enough to hire people from other big ad agencies to bring you to Portland. Like it shows, okay, we know what we're doing. We have an eye for talent. This is what the talent will do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it when, in that moment, a few years prior to me meeting Via, I think that they had a conscious decision to shift toward more consumer facing work. And Greg Smith was the ECD at the time, not the ECD, the chief creative officer at the time, and John Coleman was here. That they had brought in the reason I heard of Via in the first place was a man named Dan O'Donnell, who came. He had only been at Via a couple years before me, but he was from J. Walter Thompson, among other places in New York. And there was a conscious decision to say, hey, we're doing pretty well here in Maine, tapping our resources that we have. But if we want to really grow, we just need to get some people. They don't have to be big agencies, but we do need to start pooling resources outside of Portland, Maine. The city is under 200,000 people.
Wow.
It's a vibrant community, very artistic, creative community with a lot of transplants from DC and New York and Boston, but it's a small pool of talented advertising creatives specifically. So there was a conscious decision to go find people from New York because it's so close, but elsewhere. And Dan, when I spoke to Dan O'Donnell on the phone, he arranged a meeting, and I was just part of that decision making to go recruit people. And then once we get added, small agency of the year, the phone was ringing by people. Hey, I want to live in Maine. Like, how do I get there? Like, here's my book. So that it's one thing to have clients calling you, but it's also helpful to get other creative people calling you to say, hey, I want a yard too. How do I get to Maine?
Yeah. I'm just processing, because here in 2024, with so much work being done remotely, it feels like you could work anywhere. You could live in Portland, Maine, and work at an agency in New York or Boston or Los Angeles. I don't know how effective that is. It was a lot of talk for a couple of years after the pandemic, but I could see it being so attractive, like come here and escape. But how is your yard, by the way? Do you have?
Oh, it's lush. That's only because of the rain. No, it's great. I moved here. I was in New York for a long time. Hard to save money there.
How many kids do you have now?
I have 2 kids, 2 daughters. They're now, that one Lulu was born in New York. She's now 16 and driving. And then the moment we got here, we had our second daughter, Wiley, and she's 15.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
But driving in Portland, Maine is like you wave at everybody, everybody, everyone drives 20 miles an hour.
Yeah. It's funny. One of the things I miss about New York City is that my subway commute allowed me to read the New Yorker every week. Like, I was able to stay on top of every issue because that's how much time I spent on the subway. And then when I got here, my commute, well, the first couple of years I walked, but now we bought a house. We live out in this beautiful neighborhood near the water, but my commute is so short that there's, I think, maybe only 2 stoplights, and I don't have time I can't keep up with the weekly issues of the New Yorker. So that's something I missed.
What about the Portland Gazette?
Yeah, we have to choose.
As an ECD, or the ECD of the agency.
I'm a co-ECD. I have a partner. Yeah.
Okay, as a co-ECD, how many teams do you have under you that you're fostering and leading, and does everyone come in the office? That's kind of one question. And then the follow-up is, with regards to remote working, never mind that you're in Portland, I think it must be better. Like I Zoom a lot with pre-pros, I Zoom a lot with creative teams, and we meet on the shoot for the first time in real life. I've found over the past few years, there is something missing when we're just sitting around waiting for a client to show up and we're shooting the shit. Like the ideas, last minute ideas, or even if we all get together for some sort of prep or, hanging out at the fitting, ideas come while we're talking. Comments, thoughts.
There's no doubt that it is better together. It is faster. It's more fun. And V has been in the office together. We were among the moment restrictions were lightened. We made, I felt like I've blacked out the pandemic. A couple years. Like I just don't even think about it. But we were very quick to say, look, we're in a small town. The whole country, the whole world.
You're a pod.
What's that?
You're your own pod.
We're our own pod. We literally were. So we're like, we're going to figure out a way to get back as soon as possible. And it was, I think, around July. I don't remember, right. I can't remember the exact year, 21. We decided we're coming back to the office 4 days a week. You can work from home on Wednesday, but we're in the office Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And we were flexible. If you were uncomfortable with that, that is totally fine. We learned how to do the Zoom meetings. We learned how to do it remotely if we had to, but we're going to try this. And it was unanimous. I don't think anybody chose to stay home the whole time, but we all learned how to juggle different things. If you've got kids at home now, they aren't in school. All the parents had their own issues, how to navigate schools, teaching the kids, raising the kids. Often people have dual incomes, 2 jobs in the household, whatever it is. The pandemic caused us to figure it out, but it didn't replace the energy and the productivity of being together. And we knew it. Everybody, it sounds cliche. We all knew that. But once we were together again, it was quickly like, this is the way it needs to be. So everyone joined in. And there were moments, people would get, COVID and, then everyone stay home, but we were super flexible. Like that's the biggest thing that came out of the pandemic was being flexible.
Yeah.
How to get shit done. But back to the creativity part, the energy, and when you're in a room and you're spitballing, nothing that doesn't come close to translating over Zoom. It's too easily distracted by nothing. Nothing could be going on at home and you can still get distracted. So I love being together with people. Oh, you had a question about the number of teams.
Yeah. How big is the agency and
so it's
people under you?
Fluctuated. I've been here a while. So I've been here 16 years this fall. And when I arrived, I think we were about 65 employees, and it ballooned up to like 135 at one point. And then, we had one giant client, which is always dicey when you're a small agency to have half your income come from one client. We ended up resigning that business, and we shrank and grew. And so, at the most, I think the creative department was around 45 people. And now we're down to about 20 people right now. And so, but it's gone up and down over the years.
And Teddy coming up as a creative, now as a ECD, co-ECD with your partner, do you enjoy leading and mentoring and guiding, or do you still pick up the pencil and draw, pirate ships on napkins and things like that?
I like them both. I really like leading people. I can't say that wasn't always my aspiration. My aspiration was to make things and to be much like an artist and have my hands in the clay. As a small agency, I have no choice but to have my hands in the clay. But I also really, really enjoy seeing other people go on to other agencies to grow their portfolios themselves and to play a part. I love to guide people with like an invisible hand, where I'm having input, but they're owning it. It's their project. It's their work. I'm just here to be someone to help them, and they can ignore me or not. But when I see people become successful, it's more gratifying. I feel like way too much stress having to do it myself. And that's like, the stress is like a killer. It's my greatest motivator, but also I'd rather share that stress with other people. But I really enjoy working and helping younger creatives, especially, kind of find their, like when they crack a code on something, there's nothing more fun. Like to watch people like high five after a meeting with, whether it's in Zoom or in person, they get in the elevator after an in-person meeting and people are high-fiving. There's nothing greater than that.
Literally high-fiving? Because that sounds like something in a rom-com. Hugging. Yes. Doing the yes, pulling their fists down.
We pitched Mini Cooper a few years back, and it was in Munich. And we didn't win it, just to state what might be obvious. We didn't win it, but it was the best meeting I'd ever been in. And when we left the meeting in Munich, there was 6 of us, I think, on the pitch team. We got in the elevator. We literally were crying, hugging each other because we thought we did kill it. It was a great meeting. There were circumstances and we didn't win the business, but there's that camaraderie you get, like being in the trenches and duking it out creatively for a month, and then you have a pitch and it goes well. And even when you lose, sometimes it was like, wow, that was a special moment.
I don't think that the personal win and the team win are mutually exclusive. Like it's not a zero-sum game for the win. Like you as the leader can take it for like, hey, I did a good job. I'm really happy I coached the team. And then hey, the team won. We couldn't have done it without her and him and they and everything. Do you think a person, when I talk to women and men that reach your level, they kind of grew into it, and many never saw themselves in a leadership, mentorship role.
Mm.
And not that they wanted to be an art director or copywriter until their golden years exclusively, but it just happened naturally, and then they fell into the role. Can you point to a moment like where you're like, oh, I really get into this. I really dig this. Or was it just gradual over time?
I think it was a little bit of both. When I went to college, undergrad, I majored in government. I thought I'd be a lawyer.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, I didn't know, like, the idea of going into advertising wasn't on my radar when I was in college.
Where'd you go to school?
St. Lawrence University in upstate New York.
Oh, wonderful.
A small little liberal arts school, great time. But I had an uncle who was a photographer, and he, was an independent photographer, but he worked in advertising. He did lots. He did the Marlboro Man photography, if you remember that.
Wow. Of course, that's why I started smoking. Thanks to your uncle. Marlboro Reds.
So he had a ranch in Idaho that was his photography studio, and his son is now carrying on the business, Drew Stoecklein. But David, my uncle, took me under his wing one time. We were at some event in Oklahoma, and he said, I had to think about advertising. I should be an art director where I can, combine my artistic background with business, and those are the guys that hire me to be their photographer. And nothing I wanted more to do than to be like traveling the world, shooting photographs to someone like my uncle. And at the time, he introduced me to some art directors. One of them worked at Bozell in Detroit on Jeep, and Jeep was one of his clients at the time, my uncle's client. And so he said I should go back to school to Portfolio Center, and at the time it was like the only one in the country that just focused on creative advertising. So it was before the internet, so I sent away, and they sent me a catalog, and the catalog was just all the student work, and I saw it, and I was like, I want to do that. And I went to Portfolio Center, spent 2 years there, and then went to BBDO. And so I was just captivated by the work and the industry, the atmosphere, the energy of it all. But it wasn't until I got to McCann where I was still just an art director, senior art director. And then at some point there was like a VP thrown in a title that really didn't mean much. But I was at McCann doing my thing, part of the bigger teams, pitching Staples and MasterCard, all kinds of stuff. But only when I had like other teams I was delegating work to did I really start to kind of say, hey, this is kind of fun. There's something beyond the work that that kind of turns me on, and I always, I always knew I would be a leader of sorts. And sure, I would walk down the halls at BBDO or McCann and see all these corner offices and all these copywriters that are now like ECDs and CCOs, and sure, I always knew that was going to be the top of my career would be something like that.
That was the trajectory. Yeah. That was laid out. You knew that would happen.
Yeah, and I a lot of my colleagues would venture off and do other things, like become a director, for instance, or work at one of my account execs went to work as a producer, and then he transitioned to an editorial assistant, then an editor, and then he got a voiceover. Like it was fun to see all these different people move to different places that are all tangential to advertising. But for me, I always loved the agency. I always loved the agency, the energy, the environment of it all. I love the roller coaster ride of pitches where you win them, you lose them, and clients come, clients go. The roller coaster was exciting to me.
Did you play team sports growing up?
I did. I think the sports had a lot to do with it. I think loving playing on a team, being a part of the team, feeling the wins, feeling the losses, like sharing in the celebration and the misery together. I think that's a great analogy. It's easy to stumble on those analogies in advertising because it's very real, it's very apparent. But I felt well prepared for the battles in advertising.
That's a great story. How did you meet Dan O'Donnell, Double D?
We met. My wife had a friend that worked with him at J. Walter Thompson, and that friend knew that I was looking to maybe go to Boston, and she said, "My friend Dan is at this place in Portland, Maine called Via. Teddy ought to call him and talk to him first, because he loves this place. He loves Via. He loves the people. He loves the state." And I think Dan and Teddy would really like each other. So that was an immediate phone call. And then that's what started it. So it was through a mutual friend, also in advertising.
It's always a relationship.
Yeah.
It's always somebody that knows somebody.
Yeah. It's a crazy, crazy small world.
Let me ask you, Teddy, Save-A-Lot. There's so much to love. And listeners, I will post this at jordanbrady.com with the blog. And if you're on the podcast on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your pod, you go to the website, check out the work. And if you click on Teddy's name, it'll take you to, I'm going to put Teddy Stoecklein. The Save-A-Lot spot it's colorful. It's in a brightly lit supermarket that is art directed by groups of color. So question one, are real stores like that, Save-A-Lots?
They weren't all like that. They were transitioning to a new look feel that, so yes, long story short, yes, they are like that now.
Because of the spots. That was part of the...
Yeah, well, it was a fun assignment because we were able to influence the look of the stores.
Yeah.
Because it was simultaneous. They wanted a new brand, look, it's a discount grocery store chain, so they have to be kind of raw bone. So it's like concrete floors, steel shelving, things are in boxes, they're not even out of boxes. But we were able to affect signage, the walls, the posters on the walls, giant billboard sized things that we could inject energy into this new look. The company had been around for several decades, but we were able to make it feel fresh. And they were feeling a lot of heat from brands like Lidl and Aldi's and that were also of the same like discount grocer, but they were a little more colorful. But then our other decision was that one of the things to stop doing is acting like a grocery store. If you want people to really notice you, stop acting like bananas 99 cents. It's got to be something else. You have to give people a reason to turn left over the median strip to go and check you out. And they didn't have that. One of the things is people didn't know the name. You can buy groceries anywhere now. You can buy groceries. I mean, there are food wastelands, but you can buy groceries at Target. You can buy groceries at the gas station. There's so many places to go shopping for food now that Save-A-Lot was so far down the list of places to go, nobody was going. And some people even thought it was a discount clothing store because it sounded like Big Lots.
Yeah.
So we had to shake it up a little bit. We had to get people to say, what is that? I had no idea. And so we decided, let's not do 15-second spots and put out a discount message. Let's not act like a grocery store chain at all. Let's just act like, people from the neighborhood. Like let's be fun and inviting and get people to talk about us and see us as not taking ourselves too seriously. And, oh, by the way, you have wonderful food that costs a lot less.
The woman in the spot that's rapping the song, and it's probably a minute or so, the piece.
Yeah.
The energy keeps up and there's all kinds of colorful characters. And having shot, just from a practical level, having shot in several supermarkets over the years, it's always a chore to either have the background out of focus or to not have it be just a sea of yuck, right? And your work, it plays like a Target spot that's highly stylized, yet it's in an actual, it appears to be in an actual store. Whereas Target or Amazon or that kind of, a stylized, not monochromatic set, but leading that way, it's a set. This is real, but it has that vibe, that art direction vibe of a Target.
Yeah.
And then you got this woman rapping right at us that comes out of the blue. Her energy keeps it up. You got old people in the scooters zipping around. I just thought it was so fun and sustained what was like, I clicked on it thinking, okay, this is going to be 30 seconds. And it kept going, but I'm bopping. I got my tapping my toe.
We got some, it's one of my favorite things I've ever been a part of in my career. And a couple of fun stories out of that.
Yes, please.
We worked with a director, Drew Kirsch, who's like a legendary music video director.
Drew Kirsch, of course.
Yeah. So he was our chosen director, largely because of the way he was able to transform the look of a space and make it colorful and energetic. We also knew it was the music, the song was first. That was written by an incredible copywriter, Lauren Rodrigue, who she goes by Loro. But the lyrics are the first draft of the song she wrote. Like that, usually you present a script, you present a song, it goes through the gamut and it gets changed by everybody that touches it, and from our internal clients to the clients themselves to who knows. Everybody we went to, the music houses that we worked with, Storefront for the sound design, Adam there, like all those guys, when they got the script, they were like, who wrote this? This is incredible. Like I wouldn't change a thing. For Lauren Rodrigue. So that was a fun story because that never really happens. Everything gets changed. But the lyrics were so well written, so on point that it just really stood out. And all the vendors that you hired along the way loved the work too. So that was helpful, just because the energy was sustained through every aspect of the campaign, from the graphic artists to the editors. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. So that was a really fun project.
How did you land on your director?
We looked at a bunch, and we started with a pool of music video directors. We knew we were going to go that way. And then Drew's reel kind of rose to the top for us. And he too, when he got a hold of the lyrics, he was just really enthusiastic about it. The artists that are in the video singing, Tamara is the name of the artist, who's the woman you're referring to. Those are the actual artists. So she was the singer and performer, and I forget the gentleman's name in it as well, but he was the actual artist that we recorded too.
The only person I think was lip syncing there's a middle-aged white woman in the bakery or in the back. The butcher, yeah, she's the butcher. I was like, okay, she's not singing, but the performance from the star there, that's playing real. That's coming off real.
Yeah, it was fun. Those experiences, they don't happen all that often, but man, it was magic.
You know what I also noticed about it, Teddy, was how long ago was that made?
Let's say maybe 2.5 years ago.
Okay. So in the modern era of the last 3 to 4 years, the immersive camera and the transitions, taking our influence from TikTok, Instagram Reels and whatnot, I think it's a little out of hand. I'm kind of leading the witness, but tell me I'm wrong. You do some moves where you're going through some logos and there are transitions, but the really it's the camera allowing the performance to play out in front of it. Mm-hmm. And the framings are great, as I've talked about, and the colors and the way the backgrounds are, there's a clean aesthetic and an abundance of color, but it's very clean. but the camera's not whipping around everywhere unnecessarily. Yeah. And that's what I've seen happen. And maybe because I do comedy dialogue, there's not really, to me, it would distract from the assignments I get. But how do you feel about that trend?
Well, I think it's really important. And Save-A-Lot was it was only a couple years ago, but it was also a real stepping stone for me in terms of the art direction. And I say that because in watching Drew, the director, work, and I wish I remember the name of his DP, but in watching Drew work, his eye was so keen on making, I always loved Stanley Kubrick, for instance. His compositions are just there are gazillions of books written about it. But Drew has the same sensibility about the composition of every single shot. Every little detail is something he's processing over and over again. And, and to see him light up about the possibilities of how to get the camera from one space to another is really something to behold, because it shows how important the effort is to think of the details. The details are critical, and to keep going through the details over and over again to get it just right is what separates it from all else. And I think we live in this world where, with TikTok, everyone loves the entertainment of fast editorial moves and music all mixed together. And because of TikTok, there's sort of a suspended reality, but also this forgiveness when it's not perfect. And that's all fine. But
for TikTok,
we took a lot of that sensibilities but chose to really do the due diligence to make it perfect, so that things did work. So it feels of the time, but it's also really laborious in the details. That is as old as time.
You know what? I think you just crystallized it for me. I dislike it in advertising when it seems haphazard, gratuitous, or without a point of view. And what you've done is deliberate. Every choice was deliberate in the move. And a lot of stuff. Look, I see the camera swooping in and pulling out and, doggy cam and every which way. I just sometimes scratch my head and go, I don't understand how that serves the story. So the deliberate moves, I say kudos.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I worked with Jerry Graff early on at BBDO a long time ago when he was doing the Snickers campaign, and he said something that stuck with me forever: that the trick to doing great work in advertising is two things: cast interesting people and hire the right director.
Yeah, and maybe not in that order.
Right. So, and I think for me, the Save-A-Lot, we cast very interesting people, but also in that case, Drew was the right person for the job.
What do you look for when you're hiring a director? A lot of the listeners right now are filmmakers working specifically in advertising or breaking in, some veterans of the game. How do you look for a director? What's the first step? Is it the producer drops a pile of links in your lap?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. I mean, every client, every assignment might ask for something different, but I think that the Jerry Graff comment of casting interesting people is probably something that immediately separates some of the better directors from the rest, because there's just gazillions of actors out there, and it's very easy to get cliche or to choose someone who looks kind of stereotypical in the role, and that quickly leads you to wallpaper. And it's a fight sometimes. Some clients they want to be in the familiar. They don't want to be novel in terms of the look of it. They don't want it to stand out too much. They just want to be comfortable and familiar. And good directors have the ability to not just cast the people, but sell through the idea of why to cast somebody in a role. I have a fun story from my past about that. I did Rolling Rock Beer way back in the day with a couple buddies of mine at McCann, Chris Dealey Brian Billow, who's now a well-known director.
Yeah, sure.
He's killing it. But we chose Craig Gillespie to be the director.
Oh, one of my personal faves.
Yeah, he's incredible. And so this was an early spot in his career, all of our careers. And he chose, we had to assemble four bros, like we're doing beer. It's a Rolling Rock beer, 4 guys in a pizza parlor having beers. And it's a fun comedic thing. But one of the actors was Rainn Wilson. And Rainn Wilson was nobody knew of him then.
Sure, pre The Office.
Just moved to LA, pre The Office, and Craig, the client didn't want Rainn. They just didn't like his look. He's
too oddball.
Dude.
Yeah,
it wasn't the classic bro.
Why would we have an oddball nerd outsider drink our product?
Right,
said the client. Yeah.
Well, Craig Gillespie drew a line in the sand and said, I don't care who else you choose. If you do not let me choose this guy, I'm not doing this job. And
was he Craig Gillespie at this point to say that, or
well, it was. I mean, he's obviously, he was not like this is 20 years ago. So no, he wasn't the Craig Gillespie of today, but he was well known enough, and we chose him for a reason. But that was something that Craig knew immediately. He recognized in Rainn an interesting person that is an amazing actor, but that's what I think separates some of the better directors from the rest is the cast.
It's interesting. Yeah, it comes down to I've talked about this many times on this podcast over the years. As a director, you're selling taste, and there's only one place where you can ultimately sell your taste, and that's on your reel. So if you don't have the interesting people, you can put pictures of Dwight from The Office in every treatment, but sooner or later, someone's going to go back to your reel and go, I saw Dwight from The Office in the treatment, but there's no one that interesting on the reel. And I think another director, she's going to win from you to sweep it out from under your feet. The clients, I love when, as a commercial director, if I have a strong point of view and I'm selling the agency on my, usually we're all in sync. It's when you get to the callback and someone voices, the client will never go for that. Yeah. That's a hard sell for the client. My response is usually, well, let's try. Let's sell hard then. Mm-hmm. Because it's all about what's best for the commercial. No one that I know wants to cast a quirky person for the sake of having a quirky person on their reel. If there's no logic behind it, don't do it. And the client's right. Why would we have that person?
Yeah, it can't be gratuitous. It has to serve a purpose.
Did Craig, do you remember what his logic was for Rainn Wilson?
I don't know verbatim. I don't remember that far back, but
yeah.
But I do think it was to not be cliche first and foremost, like to not have a bunch of jocks in a booth together. It feels very cliche. So it was in an effort to distance the look of the film, using the cast to help do that from all the other beer commercials.
That's awesome. Have you directed yourself?
I have not.
Or desired to? Because sometimes, I think some of the best commercial directors have agency experience. Yeah. With comedy, there's people that were copywriters and they crush it. And they speak advertising when they get on the phone or when they're working with agencies and clients. I think that's great. From art directors, you can see, I see some briefs where I'm like, I don't know what other than working with the talent. The brief is well art directed. That's what you want to execute. It's not brain surgery what we do. It's an interesting question. I've been asked many times. I've even been on productions where the line producer's like, when are you going to start directing? But I that's never really been my aspiration. Mm-hmm. I worked with Brian Billow we were both art directors in McCann. We worked side by side. We're close friends even to this day. His aspiration was always to be a director.
and he's really, really good at it.
Yeah.
Chris Dealey, same thing. We were all buddies in the agency. Then you flash forward, and that's never been my aspiration. I don't want to be the director. I want to hire different directors every time, because I want everybody to bring something to the table, and to be able to mix it up and to try different people and different things is really important, and always evolving the work, to always try new things. And I think other people are better at directing than me. I want to hire everybody I want to hire, whether it's the colorist. I want people that are better than me. Cause that's where the magic is. If everybody's better than the next person, just gets better, better, better.
That's wonderful to hear. We need less directors. It's saturated, and we're full. What are some tips though for a filmmaker listening right now that pitches and whatnot? Like, what are things to say or not to say on a Zoom?
What I see a lot in the treatments, and treatments haven't really changed that much over the years. It's just gotten easier to find images and use AI to make your images look cooler.
Put in the GIFs.
You know, in Photoshop, it's much easier to clip out a person from a stock shot than it used to be. But
do you like the GIFs in the treatment?
Well, I just think that the GIFs, they can be fun, but it's getting old.
It's getting old. It's distracting.
Yeah. I saw a presentation recently where there's a giant screen to watch a deck that somebody walked through, and it was everything they said was amazing, but every slide was a full bleed GIF. And it was, you almost got nauseous looking at it.
Oh, this is great to hear.
Yeah. So,
I just went GIFless on a treatment and won. Yeah. And there was a whole thing. I write it, but I had a guy lay it out, and I go, the agency deck has the GIFs, but I don't really think it's just going to be eye candy.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, just because the guy's throwing a Frisbee, it's not really germane to the idea, even though somebody mentioned a Frisbee. Like, it seems gratuitous.
Yeah, the GIFs are just a way agencies were trying to show their clients how young and youthful and tapped into pop culture they were.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to the director treatment, we should already know that.
So you were saying, I cut you off. You were saying what you liked in the treatment, or
treatments haven't really changed a whole lot over the years. But what is consistent is that there's almost too much copy. There's a lot of dialogue, a lot of descriptions about it, and then I'm seeing this and then this. But then when you read through 5 treatments for the same job, everyone's basically saying that, using the same words, because you're running out of words.
Yeah, cinematic.
The director is really get the word count down to a bare minimum. It's easy to make a deck look nice, to have inspiration and photos, but just what's the essence of what you're doing? How do you see the transitions, or what's the point of this actor or this role? Just get it down to as few words as possible, because the more words, the more likely you're going to sound like everybody else.
Oh, that's a great knowledge nugget right there. Great tip, Teddy. Thank you. We're going to do a weekly feature on the podcast called Teddy's Tips. How to win the job. One of my favorites, and I wish I thought of this, but I had a wonderful call, and at the end of the call, I said, okay, so what should I hit in the treatment? And the creative team said, can you just do bullet points? Because we're going to share these with the client, and they're not going to read it, and we're going to extract certain bullet points. So the simpler you make it for us, the more we can pick it apart, like cherry pick the best and show the client. I'm not a fan of the client reading the treatment. I'm old school. I like when the agency picks and says, this is who we want. I think it's a good leadership. I know that's not the case all the while. But then I started doing the bullet points in other treatments, and they've been really effective in winning. Like a page of just idea. No fluff, just boom.
Yeah. That's interesting. We also don't share treatments with the clients, it's not a send over. Hey, read this when you're at tonight. We do. This is something I've learned over time. as well, but the agency has to sell the director.
Of course.
So in selling the client, we've already sold the client on the script, and there's an art to selling the work that every client's a little different, but the more you can bring the client into the creative discussion, the sooner to give them a little ownership in the process, ownership in the script, ownership in the idea, because more often than not, that client has to sell it up their own chain of command.
Right.
And so the more they're invested personally in the idea, in the script, the easier it is for them to sell it, because you're giving them all the motivation and you're empowering them. But you have to kind of also keep your hands on the reins. You can't let them go wild with it. And that's something that I've learned to navigate better over time. But then when it comes to the director's treatments, the same thing has to happen. You have to bring the client into the discussion sooner. Say, hey, we've got 5 people we're looking at. We have, Lana Boyd over here. We've got so-and-so over here, all these different directors, and here's why we like them. And we're just narrowing this down. These 3 directors are rising to the top for us. Do you agree? And maybe we'd have a discussion with these 3. And if the client's in that discussion, they're kind of, the clay is still wet. They're like in it, and they feel like they're part of the process. And as long as you're able to steer them to where you want them to go, then I think it gets easier. So having a treatment from you that is just bullet points might be helpful to that particular creative director, because they have to go represent it. They have to go bring the client discussion versus something that's all like polished and perfect and fluffy for them to just see.
Boy, that's interesting. I've never heard of what you just said, that the process of, hey, we've got it down to, let's say you started with 30 directors and you're going to bid 3 to show them, like, this is what we're thinking in the top 5, to get them invested in it. And it's no different than like a check-in. It used to be just over a conference call, but now with Zooms, I like to check in and go, hey, do you want to talk about why I chose Dwight from The Office to be in this commercial before we get the callbacks? Because I'm happy to X out a few people, and I don't understand why you chose those people. So we're getting on the same page. Like, I just want to know where your head's at. That's what you're doing with the client, with the director.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We have a thing. We have a thing we call the creative key, and the key is it's like 7 ways of evaluating work that's out in the world. And at the very bottom, it's wallpaper. It's just like it's wasted energy, wasted money. And then as you move up, there's things like well-crafted, but it's in category. There's provocative. There's things that become a movement. And then there's like a layer called novel. And novel is stuff that is like really well-crafted. Of course, you want at bare minimum it to be well-crafted and thought out and a smart idea. But when it comes to production, what separates like just being well-crafted in category from being novel is often production. And it's often the little details. But to get to novel, you have to push the envelope a little bit. You have to challenge the viewer, the clients, everybody involved. So you have to push it to be a little bit better, to stand out more. And there's so many points in the process where decisions are made that you need to lead the client there to get to novel. Everybody wants to be novel, but there are things and decisions made that prevent that from happening.
Teddy, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you being on the podcast here. Is there anything I didn't ask you were hoping we'd talk about, or that you thought I would ask?
No, I'm appreciative of your time and interest in hearing my words. I don't like to talk much, so I was a little intimidated by having an hour slot where I had to talk.
Well, we could have done 20 minutes. The shorter episodes perform really well, but I figured
you have a gift. It's kind of nice to talk to you. I didn't realize I could be talking for an hour, but you make it easy.
Oh, thank you. No, you're great, man. Well, the show is called Respect the Process, right?
Amen. Yeah.
And here's how we conclude the conversation. Teddy, when you hear that phrase, respect the process, what does that mean to you?
I think that it's important that every creative, every person is a little nuanced. They're a little different. And you have to give people the space to find their own way. And it might be a matter of time, giving someone time to think through something, or the way somebody comes at a problem. You can't expect everybody to do it the same way, or to do it your way, I should say. So respecting the processes, respecting really your fellow human beings, your fellow creatives, that they have their own process to work through their own assignments, whatever it may be. And you have to respect their way at it. Doesn't make it right all the time, or the solutions aren't perfect every time, but you got to recognize that nobody's identical. Nobody does it the same way. And to expect your other creatives to do it the way you would have is disrespectful.
That's a great answer. Did you along the way, as you moved into the mentorship role, did that become like an aha? Was there an aha moment where one guy was like, oh, now I see how his brain works, or, oh, she thinks like this?
Yeah, I think there are many examples in that, different creatives I've met and worked with over the years, that they all have their own ways. Some are the night owls, some are the morning people. But it becomes really apparent sometimes when other creative directors are like, I don't want to work with that person, they're impossible. And you're like, oh, that's interesting, because I didn't have that experience. Like, what's impossible about them? And it's really that they just didn't like their style of working. But I think when you try to rein in somebody to be somebody they're not, you're just wasting everybody's time. If they're really creative, let them do their thing.
You may be squelching the very thing that makes them tick.
No, that's right. You have to figure out people for who they are, recognize they're different, and you always want to set them up for success. You have to put the crumbs in a way that they're going to find them, and they're going to be very successful.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thanks again. When people click on your name, it's going to take them to, you want to go to the agency website? You have a fabulous portfolio yourself on your website.
Oh, thanks. Well, thanks very much.
Go ahead.
The agency site's fine. We just launched a new look feel of it. Great designer here had a lot to do with it. And a fellow colleague who just left, Lane Harris. But Chris Lai did the design. I think it looks fabulous. So send them to our agency website.
You got it. Wait, one last question. Cowboy yo-yos. It says, I make cowboy yo-yos.
Oh,
and it's
send it to that site.
I'll put that on there. But that's a real thing.
It's a real thing. So I'll be quick. My uncle, the photographer I mentioned, the Marlboro Man photographer,
Willie,
years ago, gave me a cowboy yo-yo as a gift, like 20-some years ago. And it's this mind puzzle. It's a ball at the end of a rope, and you have to throw a knot over it. It's like those things, that metal pieces that are intertwined, that you have to figure out how to separate.
Yeah.
It's like that. And he passed away, and at his funeral, we had a big celebration of his life. I decided I was giving a speech, and I was going to master the cowboy yo-yo. I was going to learn how to do it. And so when I did it, it took me 3 solid days of watching. I forget my wife and I were watching, I don't know, one of those, The Bachelorette or something like that. And while she's watching, I'm sitting in the corner of the room trying to do this. 3 days later, I figured it out. And then I was like, this is so fun. I'm going to go buy something for everybody at the office. It was the holiday time. And I couldn't find them online. Nobody was selling cowboy yo-yos. I'm like, I know what it's called. I have one. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll just go make it. Like, how hard is it? I'll just go to my garage and figure it out. So that's what I did. But also, cowboyyoyo.com was available. I was like, that's crazy. I'll just buy that. So I bought that and went to Shopify. And the next thing you know, it's been 6 years now. I've been selling cowboy yo-yos on the side.
This is wonderful. Okay, so we'll put a link to Cowboy Yo-Yos. Thank you so much, and appreciate you sharing all the stories and Teddy's tips.
Well, thank you very much, Jordan. It's really nice to meet you. Well, it's not really in the flesh, but I'm seeing your face at least. But
I'll see you when I finally make it to Maine. I'm going to stop by.
All right. Oysters and beers on me.
Thanks, man. Nice chatting.
Take care.
Bye.
Commercial Directing Film School's mission is to help filmmakers direct commercials professionally. With online courses and in-person boot camps, we demystify the process to get you to the next level, all taught by your accessible mentor, filmmaker Jordan Brady.
True Gentleman Industries. We make commercials.